Oh, my friends, it is so good to be back. This past week, visiting some of our members, going to Community Cafe, planning for confirmation and the rest of what's happening this year, it has been so invigorating, so refreshing, and so fun. I wish I could be there with you this morning, but our worship schedule always complicates things a little bit. I'm glad I got to see some of you already last week, and I look forward to worshiping with all of you next week. Don't worry, you'll still get to see photos of the most important Scott today. It's been an interesting 3 months in the Scott household. Sally was born 3 months ago, and while it was love at first sight, look at her, it hasn't been easy. We had to adjust to a different sleep pattern, or for a little while, a lack of one. Up until a couple of weeks ago, she's been pretty colicky, and so there would be whole afternoons where all she would do was cry and cry, which was survivable while we were both at home over the summer, but once David went back to work, that was rough. Lots of walks, lots of driving. At least we figured out our little environmentalist is happy as soon as we get outside. On top of that, we've experienced the anxiety involved in being a parent. Is she hot? Is she cold? Is she hungry? For a while, our doctor was afraid that she wasn't developing right because she wasn't smiling while she was screaming all day. Does she like us? At other times, do we like her? Of course we do, but you know what I mean. We've already started thinking about money and college. If we go somewhere, what do we do if she loses it? You'll see next week, David's not sitting quite as far to the front of the church as he once was. And just last Sunday, the organist at another church was telling us that as excited as she was when her son was born, there was still that frustration that, for example, she couldn't go out for pizza whenever she wanted. I've really missed being able to go to a coffee shop and just read for a couple of hours on Fridays like I used to. Sally's not so into staying in one place for any long stretch of time. Yes, I know how cliche this sounds. Things change when you have a baby, and yet it's always something you have to learn on your own, isn't it? There's a lot to adjust to. We have to learn each other. We have to learn how to live together. And just like I have to adapt to being a mom, as she gets older, she'll have to learn to adapt to what it means to be in a family. It's a lot of give and take. Not always easy, but so often worth it. Paul knew the difficulties of being involved in a community. It seems the community at Philippi, the joy that energized them was fading. Paul's been gone a long time, and they've been left to their own devices. The adrenaline has worn off, and now they're figuring out how this all works now that reality has set in. And to top it all off, 2 of their leaders, Yodia and Syntyche, are fighting about how it should all work, which inevitably is splitting up the congregation. What? Conflict in a church? I didn't know that happened. So Paul asks the congregation to help these 2 women to remember who they are, that they've worked in Paul's ministry, that they're all followers of Jesus, they're all the people of God. Followers of Jesus are supposed to, follow in Jesus' footsteps and encourage each other to do the same. To keep on with those ordinary works of the gospel, the everyday things that make up a community. Because when we share in that life, trust each other in community, well, we appreciate each other a whole lot more. When we expect that people will be there, when we know we can depend on others, we enjoy each other's company a whole lot more. And with that appreciation comes joy. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say, rejoice. It's one of my favorite lines of Paul's. Not that it's an easy one to follow. I don't want to rejoice always. Life can be hard. But for Paul, this line is so important. Joy isn't just an emotion. This isn't Paul dancing in a flash mob singing that song Happy over and over again, like so many other people did this summer. Joy is more than that. Joy is shared. We're supposed to rejoice together because of each other, because of our God. It's not based on our own circumstances. Paul wrote this letter while he was in jail. And yet he's still rejoicing. Why? Because for Paul, joy isn't an escape from our problems, from the pain of life. It's a reconsideration, a reinvestment in life from a different, a more freeing perspective. Joy is about laughing in the face of the crazy. It's knowing that regardless of what's going on in the here and now, whatever frustrations are standing in our way, whatever prisons we're sitting in or babies are screaming at us, it's knowing that God is still with us. The Lord is near, says Paul in verse 5. The Lord is near. Joy is supposed to be our distinguishing mark as Christians. It's a fruit of the Spirit. It's an outcome and sign of the presence of the risen Christ. It's our inevitable reaction to knowing that God is with us. For, as Paul wrote to the Romans, if God is for us, with us, near us, then who could possibly be against us? Or more to the point, if God is for us and with us and near us, who could possibly be against us and win? Obviously, the answer is supposed to be no one. That's supposed to be the answer. But real life still happens. The rubber meets the road and our tires screech and leave marks and smoke and wear down. What Paul is urging, though, is to move beyond our petty derisions, our anxiety about the future and the desire to hold on to the past, to enjoy seeing God in our community. Count on each other, depend on each other, pray for each other. These seemingly ordinary acts bear extraordinary gifts of God's love. We are called to build a community of people who can sustain one another in the journey of faith, who can do our part when we can, and trust that we lean on others when we need that extra support. Because no matter what's going on, God is with us. And if we can remember that, it's our job to celebrate with those who are around us. While I was reading this passage and preparing for today's sermon, I couldn't help but once again be so grateful for this community, the Shared Covenant Ministries. Thank you for your prayers, your support, all of your work in the past year. It hasn't been easy, I'm sure, and it'd be fair if you were frustrated with me, with everything. When I arrived last July, I don't think anyone expected that I would be sick for months, unable to participate in programs like Yes, and too exhausted to make many home visits. Trust me, it hasn't been easy on this end either. I was embarrassed and ashamed and sad that I was letting you down. And in the midst of it all, you responded as a community of faith, as a people of God. We felt your prayers and support. Those everyday acts, those little things you did to keep things going this summer, that's the gentle treatment of all people that Paul talks about. I was so excited to come back, to get involved, to once again join this community. Now, I'm going to be very clear from the start. Just as the last few months have been filled with a lot of change for me in a family, that's probably going to continue for this whole community. Just as David and I have been trying to figure out the whole parent thing, now we're both trying to figure out how to do that alongside our jobs, how to find balance between it all. It'll be a lot of give and take like always, and there will be times where I'll have to lean on others and other times when I'll be there for others to lean on. Hopefully those things can happen at the same time. And of course, with that, and as with all things, means change and refiguring out what we do and how we do it. And that's where our gentleness and our prayerfulness as a people of God is so very important. Gentleness isn't just passivity or the willingness to be a walking mat. It's an active state. It's like spiritual judo. It's the practice of being balanced and the willingness to be rebalanced as context change, as to be aware of the fears of others and help them find their sense of balance when they can. It's all of us coming together. It's looking beyond the rough patches and celebrating the whole. It's remembering a baby's smiles when it's 2 a.m. and knowing the screaming won't last forever. It's celebrating the good work that we all do and the one that we do it for, even when it seems difficult and scary and we start to forget a little bit. It means laughing in the face of the crazy when others can't. It means reminding others that this life is a life of joy. Because that's what people of faith are supposed to do. We're supposed to count on each other. Trust that we will love and care for and support each other just as Jesus did and calls us to do. In spite of conflict, in spite of change, in spite of crying babies and decreased numbers and disagreements on what exactly we are supposed to be doing on any given day, let's remember what a joy it is to be the church. Welcome back. From now on, brothers and sisters, if anything is excellent and anything is admirable, focus your thoughts on these things. All that is true, all that is holy, all that is just, all that is pure, all that is lovely, all that is worthy of praise. Practice these things. Whatever you learned, received, heard, or saw in each other. The God of peace will be with you. Welcome back.